gathering. I thought it'd be, half a dozen people that had asked me. And the press, the announcement was very, very modest. I said, if you'd like, we're going to organize, we're going to have this video shown. It is authentic, and it seems it's rare and it's authentic, and it's what I thought was a extraterrestrial being. And I said, this will just fulfill my promise to you to try to let you see this video. That was it, I didn't build it up. But the media itself built it up into this, ultimate proof of alien invasion, ultimate proof of extraterrestrial beings descending on Denver. And so right after that was sent out to announce the press conference 2 days before, the very next morning started out at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the interviews went from then until 7 o'clock at night, almost nonstop. And then at night, I remember it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, I had dozens of pieces of paper on my desk, all scribbled with interviews I was supposed to do the next day. And I just had to line them all up. And then the next morning it started again at 7 o'clock in the morning. And being taken back and forth in a limo to different TV stations, coming home, trying to brush my teeth, go back, do another interview, do a phone interview. And then the press conference started about 11. So then we did the press conference, and then the interviews continued throughout the day. And then by evening, Stan Romanek and I were asked to be on Larry King in a video link-up. And so we did. And then that was pretty much it, 2 full days. And then about that time, I was getting other offers, to go to New York City, do exclusive interviews and all that. And ended up going on David Letterman on June 10th. And then while I was there, Geraldo Rivera's group contacted me and had me go on their show. And so, this all unfolded from something, there's this all unsolicited media attention. And the only announcement I sent out was for that press conference to a handful of people. A few days after that press conference, I finally got around to looking at my emails, and there were 30 other interview requests that I didn't even see. India TV, and Moscow TV, and Popular Mechanics. And so the only way I can describe it or explain it is that when you tap into the power of the people, not only do the media pay attention because that's their readers, but it just seems that it gets this incredible amount of support. So that's pretty much how I got here, and that led to other things. And it was funny. There were 2 things that happened at the Letterman show that aren't commonly known. One was that while I was in the waiting room, the segment producer walked in, and he'd come in several times just making sure that I remembered to ask the question at the end of the Letterman interview that Letterman did not expect at all. It was a surprise question. And he came in one time, he said, "I just got a call from somebody at the Army." I said, "Really? Well, what'd they want?" He said, "They didn't want anything. The guy just said he was checking in." I thought, oh, well, which way is the exit here? I didn't know how to interpret that, but nothing happened. I went on and got to say what I wanted. And then later on, when I came home, I remember arriving at the show, and I sat in the front of the limo that picked me up just to chat with the driver. And we showed up at the back door, that's where you enter the building as a guest. And there were all the people with cameras there. And then there were a lot of crowds of people, all seeing who's the next famous person to get out. So we show up, and I thought, oh, I hate disappointing people. And so I got out of the door, and the camera people rushed over with their cameras, and all of a sudden it's like, no, okay, never mind. And went back, which is what I expected. So I went in, did the show, came out. A couple days later, after I was home, I saw something on YouTube. I was kind of monitoring things because the media, the stuff that was going on the internet was unbelievable. There were all these hoax videos popping up. The real video of Stan's alien was not on YouTube or anything. He didn't release that, but he just gave everybody a still photo. But somebody was, hoaxed a version, and then other people were doing parodies on that, and some of them were very funny. And there ended up being like 250 listings of YouTube about this, and they called it the Jeff Peckman alien video, which it wasn't. And then there were like 4,000 blogs and 230,000 websites all talking about this in 24 languages. 147,000 websites in Spanish were talking about this, 4,000 in Arabic, thousands in Chinese. So I try to monitor this to see kind of what's going on. And so one of those videos was Jeff Peckman leaving the Letterman show. That's something you would say about Letterman, you know? Or Jay Leno leaving the Tonight Show. I thought, what in the world is this? So I pulled up the YouTube segment, and it showed the back door of the building, showed the crowd of people and the camera people. All of a sudden the door opens. I walk out across the sidewalk and open the car door, and I get in, and it was over. I thought, wow. You know, for somebody to think that something like that is important means that there's a lot of attention being paid to this. So that was really, you know, how I got here. Anyway, at that point I could have just stopped everything because I was satisfied. People were paying attention to the Romanek story. I got to talk about the government cover-up. You know, more people were, it was just in the air. And it was, you know, on the front page, home pages of AOL and Yahoo and MSN. It was really quite in one of the top Google searches. So I was satisfied, but there seemed to be a reason to continue. So later on, that August, it was clear that there were some fundamental flaws or weaknesses in the ballot initiative, so I rewrote it. I revised it, set the standards higher for the people that would be on the commission, reduced the number, clarified a few things, and basically started over collecting signatures. And so then I had to have this meeting with the city attorney again. And one thing he pointed out was that if this ballot initiative goes on to May of 2009, it might be the only thing that people are voting on, because there's no candidates scheduled, no other initiatives, and it would cost the city at least $500,000 to hold the election. So I said, well, the city council can pass it, can't they, on their own, and avoid that cost? They could do that now, right? He said, well, yes, technically. I said, well, great, no problem. Now, but as expected, the city council, you just wonder who gets them dressed in the morning. I mean, they are, I won't go into that. I don't want to get negative. But anyway, I knew they weren't going to pass it, but it was important to give them the opportunity. And I said, okay, for 30 days, I'll just let them consider this. And I talked to a couple of them, and the conversations were ridiculous. But after 30 days, then that was pretty close to the election, and it looked like Obama was going to win. And so I just didn't do much with the new initiative. After he got elected, I immediately tabled it because it was obvious that there are a number of people getting in positions that were favorable to disclosure, and we'll just see what happens. And so at that point, I'd already decided that if we do it at all, it should go on November 2009, because even though I could justify putting it on in May because of the benefits it would provide, I know that cost would be used against it. So I just tabled it and said, okay, we'll wait and we'll just see what happens with the Obama administration. In the meantime, I applied to work with the Obama administration. You could go on the website, just apply for a job, and they were encouraging that. And there's a point, you get to a point where they list a lot of different departments and agencies and commissions that you could apply for. And if the one that you are applying for is not listed, you can enter it in this field. Okay? So I said, all right, I'm applying to be the project coordinator to set up the White House Commission on Extraterrestrial Affairs. And I just put that right in there. And I encouraged a few others. I know at least a few other people went in and applied for the same thing as maybe another position, media representative or liaison to Utah or something like that. And I just thought, okay, it's another seed crystal I'm planting. We'll see if anything happens from that. And I don't know that anybody's even paid attention to it. But also at that time, at that point, I had to find something to do. So I applied to, on Craigslist, I found this opportunity to write articles for Examiner.com. Now, Examiner.com is owned by Denver billionaire Phil Anschutz as just one of many things that he owns. A lot of sports teams, the San Francisco Examiner, Regal Theater chain, a lot of stuff. And so I thought, all right, I'll see what happens. Well, a couple days later, I got a call, and it said, and you're supposed to enter something that is, what would you write about? In 250 words, give us a sample of what you'd write about. So I wrote about disclosure of UFOs. And I got a call a couple days later, said, we'd like you to be the Denver UFO Examiner. I thought, okay. And it pays a little bit, depending on how many people read your thing. I thought, I might get $100 a month. And so, but the opportunity just to write articles was a good enough reason to do it. So I started writing articles, and almost from the beginning, these articles started ranking. When you go on Google and you do a search on UFO, and the first thing you'll see is all the articles, 3,000, 4,000 articles listed they're ranked by relevance, okay? You actually have to click another button to see them listed chronologically. So if you do that, then the most recent articles get posted. But my articles were all coming out number 1 out of 3,000, 4,000, 6,000 articles. And so I thought, this is great. So I was inviting other people to do it. So then Michael Salla was the next person. He became the Honolulu Exopolitics Examiner. Then his articles started to get in and rank number 1. And then Alfred Weber, he was another one. Then Larry Lowe, he's with Phoenix. Now and Alfred's the Seattle Exopolitics Examiner. Larry Lowe is the Phoenix UFO Examiner. I know Rebecca Hardcastle, I think, is going to start soon, and Niara Isley in Durango, Colorado, is going to become the Denver Exopolitics Examiner. And the interesting thing is, at first it just looked like a blog. You know, you go on, you type up something, and it gets picked up in the blogs. But this gets picked up as news. And very often you'll see that the articles that we're writing are ranking higher than articles about UFOs that are written by Washington Post, the Times, all these other, Chicago Tribune, the British newspapers. And I thought, oh, this is very, very cool. Because the two obstacles that have been there all along in achieving disclosure, one was the government, the other was the media. Well, we are the government. We have the ability to pass laws on our own. And now we're the media, too. And we can write whatever we darn well please. And nobody's editing it. Thank you. I'm very grateful for that opportunity and for that show of appreciation, because if you look at what Michael Salla and Weber and Larry Lowe are writing, there's also a couple of MUFON gentlemen, one from Chicago. He was a Chicago UFO examiner, and he would just post sightings day after day, multiple times. And he was ranking number 1. So it got to be a little bit of a friendly rivalry. You know, we'd alternate 1 and 2 positions. Now, the interesting thing is in Denver, there's probably by now, there's about 180 examiners. This was founded in Denver just last April. There's about 180 examiners. So you've got your Denver Pet Examiner, your Denver Broncos Examiner, your Outdoor Recreation Examiner, your Sex and Romance and Beer, and you know all these other examiners, all these different kinds of categories. And for the entire year up to this point, I started in December, but from January 1st to now, the Denver UFO Examiner ranks number 1 out of those 180. That means people are paying more attention to UFO articles than beer, Denver Broncos, sex, weather, shopping, cars, all these other things. And it's the same in Honolulu and Seattle and Phoenix. They're all ranking right up there, number 1, right up there, in their local market. And then in the category, they're divided by categories. So there's politics and there's technology. Larry Lowe and myself, we're in the technology category. And we're dominating that category of all the technology examiners nationally. Alfred and Michael are dominating in the category of politics that they write in. So this is grassroots journalism combined with grassroots lawmaking, and we have the power to get this done and to get these messages. And their articles, I mean, they totally outclass what I do. I just grab stuff that seems interesting, but they have in-depth articles and very, very powerful stuff. So when those children study these ballot initiatives, they're going to be looking for articles, and they're going to find the top-ranked stuff, and they're going to see Michael Salla's stuff and Weber and all these people writing. So now I want to get quickly to the strategy itself. What I'm going to propose is that disclosure can actually happen. We can take a quantum leap towards disclosure during the first 100 days of the Obama administration, which would end almost on the exact day that I submitted that ballot initiative last year, and that a vast amount of disclosure and a vast number of the population of the U.S. can be informed within the first 9 months by Election Day in November. And the way that we can do this, ballot initiatives are not for everybody. I mean, but it doesn't matter, because I didn't know how to do one, and then I just started doing them, and all this came as a result. What I'm going to propose is that we just act as a Congress. The number of people in this Congress this week is roughly equal to the 435 members of the House of Representatives. You add on 100 senators, and you've got the Supreme Court, and you've got the White House and the White House cabinet. So they're comparable in number. We can become that Congress that discloses this to the people. And there's plenty of information. I mean, imagine what would happen is if a large majority of the population of the United States knew as much about UFOs, all this information, as we've heard even just in this week, all right? It would totally change the dynamic of what's going on. The money being siphoned out of the Treasury, the opportunities for clean energy, the opportunities to interact with extraterrestrial civilizations. People don't know that, partly because they don't think they have a reason to know. They don't see any direct connection with their daily life. But when you see that people are losing their jobs, they can't afford their energy bills, businesses close, and this is just a snowballing effect. At the local level, person to person, I think we can achieve disclosure much more honestly and effectively than anybody at the federal level. I think that's a task that we can do, and we can do it better. We can do it on our own terms. We don't have to wait. We don't have to just sit on the front porch of Congress and the White House and beg them to pay attention and to do the right thing. We know what the right thing is. So if a year goes by and we all come back here, we can't say that the government didn't disclose like we thought. We now know that we have that ability to do it ourselves. And we have nobody to blame if it doesn't happen in this year, because the government doesn't have all the best stuff. They don't have all the evidence, and they can't keep us from sharing that evidence that we have. And we have a lot. And I think we'll find more that surfaces over time. So I'm going to just kind of tie this all together with a simple plan. If you go to my website, extracampaign.org, that's the main campaign website, you'll see a couple of buttons there. One is how to get paid writing for Examiner.com. And that will lead you to another section where it describes what to do. The other button is how to start a ballot initiative. Okay? There's so many different rules in doing a ballot initiative that are unique to that particular town or city or county that it's impossible to coordinate from a central office. It's just you go there, you look, you find out if you have ballot initiative rights, and you find out how to do it. Then you can take the text of the initiative that has already been presented, and you can just change the wording to fit your local circumstances, change the name of the city, shorten it if you have to, do a completely different thing. And all I'm going to ask you to do is just find out how to do it, create a draft or final version, and then just submit it. Don't worry about whether or not you can find the people or the money to get the signatures collected, because stuff can start to happen. That's your seed crystal in that perfectly still pond. And miracles start to happen. There's a few strategies I want to mention. Charter schools. Now, there's all kinds of charter schools. These are state-funded schools that get set up independent of the school system. And very often they'll have a particular theme, science, art, whatever. They'll teach the core courses in, core disciplines, mathematics, science, history, all that, but it's in the context of art or something else. I would say find out if you have the ability to set up a charter school. Then, find out what to do to set up a charter school. Find out if there's a school that's available. There's a lot of public schools that are closing. And what you'll find is that there's all kinds of ideas that will come up, So just call it something. Call it this. You want to set up the Starfleet Academy. You want to set up the Exopolitics Academy, the Star School. Just give it a name, and then grab some statistics and some information and some polling information. Say, we know there's a lot of interest in this topic from the youth. And we'd like to set up this whole thing. Now imagine if the history class involved digging into Glenn Kimball's thumbnail drive of archive of documents going back to eternity, beginning of time, and then you have David Sarita's, teaching space science. Who would ever drop out of a school like that? That would be exciting. And a lot of people would go crazy. The adults, get you people, just go away. But the students, I think the students, you'd probably be overwhelmed with interest. So just explore that. Another one is small claims court. Now, in Colorado, every county has a small claims court, and People's Court TV is a very popular thing. And it's where a citizen can pay a few bucks. In Denver, for $31, you can file a small claims lawsuit against someone. Now, you can also, if I have that part of it, it's limited to some thousands of dollars. Nobody can have an attorney represent them. So what you can do is just find out how to file a small claims lawsuit, pay a few dollars, And think about NASA. In Denver County Court, you can sue any public agency or department or any employee that works for a public agency or department. And you can sue them for fraud, misrepresentation, concealment, or deceit. So think of just one agency, NASA. Now, on NASA's own website, now I took this from, I think, their 2002 mission statement or something. They said, this was a good laugh. We are honest and ethical in everything we do. Just put it right out there like that. But we know that and then also they get over $17 billion a year in funding. And that works out to about $50 a person in the United States. I think that's how I calculated it. And one of their other parts of their mission is to look for signs of life in outer space. But we know from the whistleblowers that when they get images, photographs, and video footage that have UFOs in the background, they erase those out or they destroy the photos. So here they are. I mean, think about Enron. You know, what's the difference? You say, we're looking for this, we're honest, we're looking for this evidence, and we need another $17 billion this year to find it. And then they find it, and then they erase it, you know. Okay, we don't really have it. And then they come back for another I mean, anybody with even a half a brain of a banana knows that that's fraud, you know? And deceit and misrepresentation and concealment. So I would propose that if anybody, you know, has the interest, to just scope this out and see what you can do locally and come up with some arguments. Just because somebody does it in one place doesn't mean that other people can't do it in another place. Now, they may say you don't have standing. The thing is, this becomes a focus for the media. Somebody's revealing that NASA is defrauding everybody, but they don't really have the right to sue NASA. Well, at some point, you're going to reach a critical mass of people saying, what? We're being defrauded and we can't do anything about it? Well, who knows? Somebody might take on the task of creating a class action lawsuit out of that. But on an individual level, these are strategies that don't cost anything or very little, and yet have a huge amount of leverage in terms of getting media attention or just gathering other like-minded people and organizations to rally around the cause, just like the ballot initiative in Oregon. All of a sudden, it was a focus for everybody. But the ballot initiatives is really the most powerful. Women gained the right to vote in Oregon and Arizona because of ballot initiatives. Last week, President Obama was in Denver to sign his stimulus bill, and everybody that got up to speak was talking about the value of this stimulus package for creating a green economy, green energy economy, renewable energy economy. And they were praising Colorado as a leader in renewable energy and the renewable energy economy. They even had a spokesperson for Namaste Solar as the person to talk, and they gave him quite a bit of time as representing that whole economy. Well, the reason Colorado is in that position is not because of some brilliance on behalf of the state legislators or the governor, but because a ballot initiative was passed 5 years ago to require a renewable energy portfolio standard throughout Colorado. A certain percentage of the energy sources had to become renewable energy. And from that sprouted all these different energy companies. That was a ballot initiative. Child labor laws, very important child labor laws, environmental laws have happened through ballot initiatives. So this just shows you the power that we have. And we can, actually, one thing I forgot to mention was that back in the early 80s, there was a ballot initiative. There was a lot of concern about the use of nuclear weapons. And so I think it was Santa Clara County had a ballot initiative to somehow regulate or prevent companies that made parts or did business involving nuclear weapons technology, prevented them from doing business in that county. Now, I don't know if it passed or not, but I think by the next year, within 2 years, there were about 200 similar ballot initiatives written in different ways, approaching the problem in different ways. And I believe it was 1984 then, out of about 18 million people that were voting, 10 million of them voted in favor of these various ballot initiatives. It was called the Nuclear Freeze Initiative. It was sort of all under one umbrella. So imagine, think about what has happened with the publicity and the discussion that resulted just from one person taking one document quietly into their city office without telling the media, and multiply that times 10 or 100. And it's actually exponential because they reinforce each other, and then it becomes a huge movement. Now, right now, Obama's not saying anything. He's not responding. But I can assure you, he got to where he is because of community organization, community organizing. And he's counting on that continuance of community organizing to implement various programs that he has on his agenda. I don't think, well, I do believe that Obama will get involved in this disclosure effort, but not until we do, in a real visible way. If we had the same level of activity as the nuclear freeze movement, and by the way, one of the things they're concerned about the most, they didn't just go away, they kind of merged into an organization called Peace Action. It has 100,000 members, and one of their objectives is to prevent the weaponization of space, right? So right there, you've got an overlapping interest with this very large group, and don't be surprised if they show up and say, hey, we see what you're doing, you're taking initiative, and now the timing is such that it seems like we can really make a lot of progress with the Nuclear Freeze Initiative, as well as a disclosure of all this UFO stuff, because they're concerned about that as well. So now they have a potential alliance, not only amongst, with us, but 10 million civilizations who are all concerned about weapons, nuclear weapons in space. So these would be the 4 different categories of things that can be done. The charter schools would be interesting. There's a lot of curriculum. If you're interested in developing curriculum, maybe you can gather together with people and start hammering out an outline of curriculum for a school that would be centered around these topics, with, and integrating that into the core disciplines. Small claims lawsuit, that's something you don't need any direction on. You just go to your county and figure out how to do that. But these ballot initiatives, find out how to do that. You can take an initiative, use the language from my website. There's just another button that says Denver Extraterrestrial Affairs Commission, and that will come up with the PDF that shows you the full 3-page document. And if you're interested, then I can send you a Word version, Word document, so that you don't have to rewrite everything from the PDF file. You can just plug in some different words. Sign up to be an examiner. Now, this is going to cost something, but I want to tell you right now, it doesn't have to cost you anything. Examiner.com is trying to get 12,000 people to be examiners across the country. And so a couple of weeks ago, they started a referral program where they provide a $50 incentive for to somebody who recruits each new examiner. Now, if in the size of group that the people that are here in this Congress, whether it's these people or friends of yours back home, 600 people becoming examiners ready to start reporting about these ballot initiatives, about this whole issue, even, talking about doorknobs most of the time, but every once in a while talking about extraterrestrial doorknobs. I mean, just starting to flood that whole field of media with all these related articles, that's about $30,000. Now, this is what $30,000 would accomplish. First of all, it would get one of the ballots on in a major city. Denver would be a good place because we're ahead of it, but it could be Palo Alto, it could be Phoenix, it could be Portland. Paid petitioners, if you have a strong group locally, you can do this job on your own. You just go out and collect signatures. And it can be a lot of fun, but sometimes it can be, long hours or bad weather. So paid petitioners know how to do it. Also, what can be done is that you can create, and I would encourage you, if you're interested, to help create a citizens briefing document. A few years ago, I ran for a local state legislative office just because the guy that was running unopposed. And he hadn't ever been elected in the first place. He was installed to replace somebody else. Well, that just doesn't sit well with me. So, I collected some signatures, got on the ballot, and got some endorsements from some very respected community leaders. And I created this tabloid. Now, this is 11 inches by 17 inches. It's 8 pages. And each one of these, and then I printed up, raised some money, printed up 20,000 of them, and I delivered about 5,000 of them myself, door to door. This only costs 7 cents. How much information can you get on 11 by 17 pages for 7 cents and deliver it to a household and put in there the kinds of information that you would normally only hear in a Congress like this or on the internet if you know where to look? How much this disclosure or the lack of disclosure has cost us? What are we being denied in benefits? Putting in whistleblower testimony, all these things. So this is something that can be done, and that's going to cost something. But, for $30,000, so the idea is that because Philip Anschutz's company is willing to pay $50 for each new person that becomes an examiner, what if collectively we come up with 600 examiners and funnel all the money into jump-starting this whole strategy of these multiple ballot initiatives? So that way we've got the initiatives out there, they're getting media attention. We're also, as examiners, writing about that. And we can even send the same article out to everybody and post it because it comes up as a local thing. And then they just list it in a different part of Google as sort by date with duplicates. And then even if it's exactly the same article with the same headline, you'll see pages and pages of that coming from cities all over the country. So those are the ballot initiatives, writing the examiner columns, and creating this briefing document are three of them. The fourth one is that there's going to be, well, the conferences now. I think this would totally change the character and the increase the effect of the X conference coming up in April. As well as there's another conference called A Galactic Gathering, and out on the table you'll see flyers for this conference. It's going to be held at the University of Denver, and it's being held, sponsored by the Institute for the Study of Galactic Civilizations. This is a relatively new organization. The former president, the founding president, was the late Dr. Maury Albertson, who passed away just January 11th. And it must have been a very auspicious moment because January 11th, if you remember, was described as being perhaps the brightest full moon of the year, and for a long time. There was another very bright full moon in December, but this one, I happened to be outdoors at 1:30 in the morning that night, and it was almost like, it felt like daylight. It felt like, you know, a cloudy day, but during the daylight it was so bright. And then I found out that he had passed away that day. I thought, wow, to go out in that much light, you know, it's almost like he added a bunch of light as he left. And so it's going to be done in honor of him. And the University of Denver, I think, is the only place outside of Stockholm that has had a large gathering of Nobel Peace Laureates a couple of years ago with a group called Peace Jam. So it was felt to have a very dignified, scholarly setting for that conference. And so you can get a flyer on that at the table. The last thing I want to talk about, and I've got 15 minutes left. I do want to take a couple questions if there are some, but the last thing is this was entitled, you know, how to get the message of extraterrestrials to the masses by going over the heads of the feds. Well, now you know how to get the message out there to the masses, and you also know that what's over the heads of the feds are all of you, all of us, we the people. We are that only legitimate fountain of power in this country. But the other thing was how to make sure that the path was well lit. And there's really two aspects of that I want to talk about just for a few minutes. One is that PR companies, I don't have as much time as I wanted to talk about this, but write down PR Watch, PRWATCH, prwatch.org. There's two guys there that are just expert investigative journalists, and they're so trusted in their integrity that they get leaked documents of PR strategies that are crafted to discredit individuals, organizations, and entire movements. Look up raisins, chlorine, Persian Gulf War, and a PR firm named Hill and Knowlton. That's Knowlton, Hill and Knowlton. Hill and Knowlton, in the first Persian Gulf War, they were representing the United Arab Emirates, I think, or Kuwait, maybe it was Kuwait. And there was a well-known news segment of a young Kuwaiti girl talking about how Iraqi soldiers had come into a hospital and taken babies out of their incubators and put them on the floor. And it was a terrible thing, and it stirred up a lot of anger, and it was really considered a pivotal thing in getting the U.S. involved in that war. But the thing is, that never happened. The whole thing was staged as a congressional hearing by this PR firm. So just remember, and the raisins, some guy discovered there's dozens of raisins, the dozens of toxic chemicals on raisins, so he wrote a book about it. So California Raisin Board went after him, and somebody pretended to be his representative and called all the places where his lectures were set up to cancel his lectures. And if that's what they're going to do for raisins, you know, you can imagine something that's going to affect the fossil fuel industry, the nuclear weapons industry, all of the weapons, pharmaceutical industry, you know, they can get kind of nasty. But I'm just telling you to read through that, pick a few articles, so that you'll know that when you see an article series of the type that showed up in Popular Mechanics just recently, their whole March issue is on UFOs, you'll see that it's just part of a campaign to disrupt what we're doing, to discredit people, and to turn the attention away, you know, so that this doesn't get disclosed. But in that, because there's so much negativity, they can send people in to infiltrate organizations and stir up a lot of negativity and pit people against each other. It's written in their documents. It's, okay, now we're going to send this group in, and we're going to get these doctors, and we're going to discredit this person, and we're going to disrupt this conference and all that. So when you see this kind of negativity showing up, you might as well consider it to be part of a bigger PR campaign to discredit everything that we do and who we are. So just be alert to that, and stay focused on the truth, and be respectful of each other, and argue the facts all you want, but don't tear anybody down, because that just feeds that energy. So really, the part of lighting that path is to be respectful and to pursue this with an eye towards what is the truth, and to do this on a foundation of love, because ultimately that's what it's all about for our civilization, for the extraterrestrial civilizations. We keep hearing that over and over again. The other thing I want to talk about briefly is a technology that is quite new. It's called Metatron technology, and it is a technology of light that has its origins in the divine or celestial realm. Now, the developer of this technology is here today, and he'll be here for a few days. He'll be at the booth talking about it. His name is Ronald Hall. Ronald, would you please stand up? Right there. And he lives in St. George, Utah. Please give him a hand. What he's created is, with the help of these other realms, is something absolutely wonderful. It's a technology of light that, if you think about Dr. Emoto's work with the water, putting an intention on a piece of paper and sticking it on the bottle of water, and then it changes the crystalline structure into something very beautiful. Well, imagine if you had an intention from a divine level that was put into a form that could use the electromagnetic field on Earth as the medium instead of water, and through putting that intention in that field, you create certain effects. And it seems that the effects are unlimited in what is possible. There's different programs like the Metatron stress-free computer workstation. You download, and this is free. The things I'm telling you about, right, are free. There's other versions for larger applications that cost some money, something you can carry with you or put in your car, but there's several things that are free. Stress-free computer workstation, you download this as a PDF, it goes into your computer, and it just sits there. It's not an application, it doesn't run in the background, but when people have done that, they've noticed some really remarkable things. People that are sensitive to electromagnetic fields can feel quite an immediate sense of comfort and clarity, because what it does is and this is just a side effect, it removes the chaos from the man-made electromagnetic fields that occurs as a result of information being lost from the signal over time and distance. It becomes a kind of clutter, an inaudible background noise that seems to be the real cause of these agitations, these different kind of disorders that occur for people as a result of being around these man-made electromagnetic fields. It's not so much that there is a field, but it's being man-made, it has this chaos in it, and that seems to be the agitation. So they notice that their work environment or studying environment is more comfortable. Metatron stress-free computer is another program. Then there's the Metatron Global Peace Program, which actually involves a grid around the whole planet for peace, and every time you download this, it connects to that grid and just strengthens that grid and makes it more vibrant. There was one created specifically for this purpose, for this kind of issue, and it's called Metatron Cosmic Peace Program, and that acts like a two-way mirror, and you can read about this in a brochure that I have out there on the table. This is one brochure that describes the general technology, and then this other one that's actually inside has this picture of sort of the backlit map of the world. And what it does acts as a two-way mirror, so that any negative intentions that are directed towards human beings from malevolent extraterrestrial beings is reflected back as divine love to transform that intention so that it can then reach human beings. Any intentions from human beings of a negative tone towards extraterrestrial beings would be reflected back as divine love and transformed, and only then would they reach the extraterrestrial beings. And people that are sensitive to this kind of subtle technology or have subtle perception have said some amazing things. One woman I've known for a very long time was at Ron's house before she knew he was doing this, and she walked in. She said, "Ron, what is going on here? All of your furniture and your walls are covered by this film of gold light." And he explained this to her, and she started, there's several people with very, very sensitive perception that have commented on this. And later on, she downloaded something for her apartment that was meant to protect her from other kinds of negative energies. When there's a lot of people around you, and all kinds of energy can be passing through. And when she downloaded the program, she said a point of light came out of it. And then that point of light expanded into a square, like a line drawing made of lines of light. And that square expanded into a cube. Now, if you're familiar with this, then the first thing that comes to mind is that's Metatron's cube. And it's the most powerful form of sacred geometry from which all the other sacred geometry emerges. And then it expanded from there and filled up the whole apartment with a 2-inch band of gold light around every seam between the floor and the wall and the ceiling and the wall and the two walls in the corner. And then she felt a certain kind of protective environment suddenly, that it was her own energy, her own space that was being protected. So these are free programs. One was just created recently on Valentine's Day, at that moment when, went into the age of Aquarius. There's emails floating around about that. And it was because one of Ron's clients was very involved in